bring some clarifications here on how to return an economic impact payment, which calls stimulus payment. Many of you guys have questions regarding this, and the IRS has just released the complete information on how to return your economic impact payment if you think that you receive payment that you were not entitled to. So now there's a way you can return this payment to the IRS, even if you receive if it was a check, if it was a direct deposit to your account. So there's a way you can return that money to the IRS if you think that the payment that you received that you were not entitled to. So like for instance, I've been hearing that there are non-resident that came to the US and they're receiving payment, they're receiving stimulus payment. They came here on F1 or J1 and they are receiving payments, and those stimulus payments are not eligible for non-resident. It's only for legal resident or US citizen, unless you have met the 5-year mark, which would make you a resident of the US that will qualify you to file your taxes as resident for tax purposes. Then you'll be eligible for the economic impact payment. But otherwise, if you receive payment, you need to return it. So so one of the questions we will be asking, like people have been asking, how should they return the payment? So first of all, if you need to return an economic impact payment to the IRS, you can mail it to the IRS address based on the state you live. So based on the state you live, there will be a specific address where you can mail that check. For example, if you live in Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, you will mail your stimulus check to the Andover address. So for some other state is different. I think for Florida you will mail it to the Texas address, and if you live in New Jersey, you will mail your check to Kansas, the office in Kansas City. So it's varies to where you live. So that's how you'll be able to mail your check. When you're returning a check that was not cash or deposited, you should write void in the endorsement section on the back of the check. And you will mail the voided Treasury check immediately to the appropriate IRS address. Do not staple, bend, or paperclip the check. You will include a brief explanation of why you are returning the check. And also, if you're returning a direct deposit or paper check that was not cash or deposited, you will mail a personal check, money order, etc. to the appropriate IRS location also. So you see, if you receive a paper check, you will, on the back of the check, you will write void. On the endorsement part, you will write void, and then you will mail that check immediately to the IRS location, to where you live. If it's, like I said, if you live in Massachusetts, you will mail it to the Andover address. If you live in New Jersey, it would be Kansas. If you live in Florida, it would be the Texas office. That's where you will mail it. So therefore, you will need to go to the IRS website and find out exactly where you live, to exactly where you need to find out, to exactly where you need to mail it to, based on where you live. There will be complete information available on the IRS website for that purpose. So if you returning a direct deposit, you will mail a personal check, money order, etc. to the appropriate IRS location. Because if the IRS deposit the money to your account, so there's no way to return it as a direct deposit. So therefore, you will need to go to your bank, or if you don't have a personal check at home, you go to your bank and then you ask them to give you a temporary check. Ask them to give you emergency check. They will give you that, and then you can send the payment back to the IRS like that. And you will need to make the check payable to U.S. Treasury and white 2020 EIP and the taxpayers, and you will need to put your identification number, your social security number, or your individual tax identification number of the person who's on the check. So your identification number, if you have an ITIN, you will put that. If you don't have an ITIN, then you will put your social security number, or you will put your identification, or your identification number of the person. But it has to be the information of the person who is on the check. So you cannot return a check that with other people information, and it has to be the name of the person that's on the check that you need to put those informations on. And then you will always want to make sure you include a brief explanation to why are you returning the check. So you want to put information, you want to explain why you're returning the check. That's very important, otherwise they will get the check. They will be like, okay, what's going on? Why are you returning this check? So IRS will start thinking maybe this check went to the wrong address, and they might try to send it back or just hold it and like, okay, what's going on? So they will be confused. They won't know what to do with the check. So it's very important that you actually explain why are you returning the check. And also when if many of you guys have spouse that die, and you receive stimulus payment for. So the way that goes, if you have a spouse that was once alive and then die in the middle of the tax season, and then now you receive stimulus payment, if you did file your tax return as married filing separate, and that spouse died, then you will need to return the payment. But if you did file your tax return as married filing jointly, then you don't need to return the payment. So this money would be yours to keep. You won't need to return that payment because when you file your tax return, your spouse was alive and you did file the return as married filing jointly, and then now your spouse died, then this money will be yours to keep. So you do not have to return that money. So, but if you did file your tax return as married filing separate and your spouse died, you have to return the payment. If it was issued to you in the form of a check, you will return the check. You will return the whole check, and then IRS will reissue it to the surviving spouse. So that's basically how it is. When returning a payment for someone who died, a payment made to someone who died before they receive the payment should be returned to the IRS. Return the entire payment unless it was made to joint filers and one spouse is still living. In that case, return half the payment, but not more than $1,200. If someone cannot deposit a check because it was issued to both spouses and one spouse has died, the individual should return the check. Once the IRS receives and processes the return payment, an economic impact payment will be reissued to the surviving spouse. So it's pretty clear what Harris have on their website. So once you had a spouse that was alive and then now the spouse died, if you did file your tax return as married filing jointly, you do not have to return that payment. But if you did file as married separate, then you need to return the payment. So that's basically how it go. Then if it was issued as a check, you will return the whole check, and then IRS will reissue it to the surviving spouse. But if it was direct deposit to you, then you will only return half of the money, because if you did file as married jointly, that money should have been $2,400. You would have received $2,400. But if you did file as married, it will be $2,400. So therefore, you will just return half of it. You return half of it to the IRS, and then the rest you will just keep it. And you will always want to make sure you put a brief explanation to why are you returning the check, because otherwise IRS will not know why, and they will just confuse. They'll thinking like maybe the check went to the wrong address, and then now you return it. So it's very important you put explanation to why are you returning. So if you guys have any question regarding this topic and you guys need help finding the location to where you need to return the check, you guys can go ahead and contact us here. We will be glad to assist you.